men and then killed 500 children and women in the village church. The specific reason for the massacre was not announced and has never been discovered. Oradour-sur-Glane has never been rebuilt. The Nazis were fighting two wars, one without rules against the Jews, the other a general war, but the two wars were in fact one. Believing that one group of human beings, the Jews, were vermin, led the Nazis to treat all their fellows as such. It became one war against the value of individual life.
For all free people, the war became something more, a crusade against a terrible evil. Beyond the usual claims of justice and right, the Allies, Roosevelt and Churchill, argued that the Nazis were an uncommon breed of evil, anti-humanistic, the very antithesis of civilization. The cost of the conflict was enormous, more than 30 million dead, the majority civilians. The Allies ruthlessly pursued victory in response to the Nazis' total war. The Reich was to be destroyed as effectively as it had devastated its neighbors.
Summer 1944, D-Day. Germany careened into defeat, invaded from east and west, and the Reich, that was to have lasted 1,000 years, drowned in a sea of blood. And so, finally, it was over. The particular plague that had tormented the world for 12 years passed away and was stilled. For the millions of soldiers, among them hundreds of thousands of Jews in the Allied armies, the time had come to go home. But in Europe in the summer of 1945, 11 million prisoners of war and displaced people were uncertain where home might be. None more so than the remnant of the death camps. 100,000 Jewish survivors fled into the British and American occupied areas of Germany from the east. Some Jews tried returning to the Polish cities, but within a year there was another pogrom. Over 8 centuries of Jewish life in Poland virtually came to an end. This is Krakow, Poland today. The Jewish community still has a warden, but now it numbers a scant 700. Once it was nearly 60,000 strong. The Jewries of Central Europe were, as the Nazis had desired, very nearly wiped from the face of the earth. And the secular Yiddish culture that flourished here has disappeared forever. The Jewish presence, which had contributed to the history of these lands for more than 8 centuries, was savagely cut off. But the Nazis attacked far more than the communities of one small European ethnic minority, and the significance of the destruction of those communities is of a moment greater than the limits of Jewish history. The Nazis...
There is nothing else my generation could do but bear witness, and therefore bear witness for humanity. They thought they could kill 6 million Jews and go on as though the 6 million Jews didn't die. Well, together with the Jew, the image of man was destroyed. And we have all the reasons in the world to despair and to give up on man and to give up on culture and on civilization, on language and even on God. But we won't permit it to happen. We have the reasons to do so, but we will not invoke them. And in spite of everything, we shall go on believing.
Out of these ashes comes the understanding that no one's life can be guaranteed without constant struggle. Belief in the ultimate ability of humankind to overcome the darkest, most brutal of forces is the light which must carry us forward.
Israeli Defense Forces, once a senior aide to General Moshe Dayan. He is an historian by profession and a leader in the Peace Now movement in Israel.
Into such a peace.
Baron the Israeli and Milhem the Palestinian. They came to the United States in the spring of 1984 to talk with Americans and to talk to each other.
Both sides have a growing understanding to one fact, that the era of violence in the Middle East must be over, that no side can gain anything out of using force.
But in a few cities, the very idea of talking to each other sparked protest.
We are doing something which is almost impossible. We belong to 2 camps that have been in a bitter strife for the last 60 years. Mr. Milhem is 54 years, I'm his senior, I'm 55. And almost like prisoners, we are bound to listen to each other. We are bound to sometimes be shocked by what the other says. We are bound to be revolted by what the other says. And yet we are chained to each other by one important chain. And this is our deep conviction and feeling that we have to make our dent, our contribution to end this strife, to transcend it, to get out of it.
Seattle. At the University of Washington, almost half the audience was Arab American. And Mohammed Milhem knew he would be criticized for appearing with an Israeli.
Mordechai served in the Israeli armed forces ever since he was 17. And he fought against the Palestinians and the Arabs. And here I am sitting with him. You know why? Because I felt, as a Palestinian, that not only Mordechai, but thousands and thousands of Israelis have come to realize and to discover the fact that they are in the Middle East, they are in the middle of Arabs and Palestinians, and that if they want security and peace, they will have to come understanding with that flood of people there, one way or another. That's why the forces of peace in Israel are growing. We here, we should encourage them grow more, and we Palestinians should encourage them grow more.
When we see Israelis with blue eyes, blonde hair, and M16 rifles in our land, peace, he asks? I can't accept that. Milham asks him where he's from. He tells Milham he's never seen a speck of his homeland, Palestine, but he's ready to die for Palestine. Milham replies, you have to understand. Wait a minute, I'm talking about reality. When we have our state, no one will argue with us. Not even the Americans. Not the Arabs. Not the Russians.
The fact that violence began by the Palestinian side, no doubt about it. Violence, bloodshed.
Do you call it violence or defense?
All right, you call it defense, I call it violence. That's a matter of words.
I want to ask you, originally, where do you come from?
From Tel Aviv, I was born in...
No, your father.
That's when you ask me where I come from.
No, where your father comes from.
You make it a second question.
Oh, yeah, no, the last question I asked, where your father comes from?
My father comes from Poland and my mother comes from Germany.
That means will never be peace in Palestine until when you live in Poland. Because the time you born in Palestine and I born in a camp, that's nonsense. My generation in Palestine and you live in my fatherland, my generation land, and you tell me about peace? Where you come from the peace? From which side? From which corner?
I think we will have to decide.
You can persuade me from this.
I understand what you're saying, but I want to tell you that what you are saying means that we have to decide who is right with the force of guns. You want to do it? You want to have war?
Guns, blood, I don't care. As far,
okay, let's continue the fight.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think.
I'm ready.
I'm ready. It's not
I'm
me.
ready to fight.
I'm ready to fight. It's not me. It's my sixth generation forward.
Okay, whatever you say, I only answer you.
Okay.
My answer is that this means you want another war.
Over my land and you're talking about peace. It's not make sense. Never be sense.
Mordechai Bar-On was born in Palestine 20 years before the State of Israel existed. His parents had come to these shores in 1924 with the early Zionist immigrants and settled in the citrus orchard region near Tel Aviv. For a time, the Jewish immigrants lived in relative peace with the Arabs. But when he was 18, Bar-On and the Jews of Palestine were facing their first war. His army superiors quickly recognized his abilities, and he was handpicked as senior aide to General Moshe Dayan in 1956. At the age of 35, he was promoted to full colonel, and then named Chief Education Officer, a key job he held until his retirement in 1968. He went to work with the Zionist youth movement, and he taught history at Hebrew University in the 70s. After Israel's spectacular victory in the Six-Day War, he saw an opportunity for peace.
There
will be no solution without the Palestinians, he tells a group at a kibbutz. The future of the West Bank is hotly debated in Israel. Half the population wants to keep it. The other half would trade some or most of the land for peace. Bar-On, as part of the Peace Now movement, would go further than most Israelis to make a deal for peace. And privately, Bar-On is one of the few willing to consider an independent Palestinian state. In Jerusalem, a Friday evening Sabbath dinner. The Bar-On family is traditional, but not typical. His two eldest daughters are married and live nearby. One son-in-law is a Palestinian. The Barons consider themselves ardent Zionists, committed to building the Jewish state.
I'm not a disloyal Israeli. I'm a very loyal Israeli who for years was doing his job in defending his cause by talking to audiences in America, among others, to show them how right we were and how wrong the other side was. And here, for once, you have to talk in a manner in which right and wrong become irrelevant. What is relevant is how can we make ourselves live with each other beyond right and wrong. And this is a transformation in the mind of people. I have in my tongue a wealth of arguments against the Palestinians, and occasionally even in this trip I use them. But more and more I felt it's wrong to do that. I mean, that's not the thing you ought to do now. What you ought to do now is not to convince yourself or the audience that you were right and they were wrong. The hell with that. Or you have to find a modus in which the other side will be able to live with and be with you in your great attempt to make peace.
I'm Rabbi Sanford Reagans, and together with my colleague, Rabbi Leonard Bierman, I welcome you here to Leo Beck Temple this evening.
The fifth day of their tour in the United States.
Deeply concerned with the life of our community.
Baron and Milham appeared in a Reform synagogue in the Bel Air section of Beverly Hills.
Discussion of the issues of the hour.
Please, warm welcome to Mohammed Milham.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
A handful of hecklers from the militant Jewish Defense League denounced Baron as a traitor and protested Milham's presence as a desecration of the synagogue.
If you would like to take your questions or statements and put them on paper, they will be read. However, if you continue these outbursts, you will be escorted out of here. Understand?
This is not the first time
It won't be the last time either.
This is not the first time I visit a synagogue and address a Jewish audience. Several times I had the privilege to address Jewish audience, both in the occupied territories